What's up, Vincent, my man? Welcome to the community. And these are some fabulous questions. I felt like it'd be much easier to respond with a Loom video. I love that you're 16 getting into running. I wish I would have been more consistent with running at that age. So I love that you're thinking about this. Good weight, and you're trying to bulk. I'm curious about the being forced to be vegan, like what that's about, if that's family or something like that. If that's the case, obviously, not much you can do about that. But one thing I would say is smoothies are amazing and protein powder. And obviously, it's not the most ideal source. Like you might want something less processed, but if it is what it is and you're trying to bulk, I think it's worth it. Especially at your age to just get this little boost in the beginning, and then maybe as you mature, make more money, move out, you kind of have more choice. But tell me what you mean by forced vegan. I'm curious. But protein, man, vegan protein powder, and just fucking 2.5, 3 scoops of that every day with a smoothie. I used to do 4 scoops of protein powder. I've been vegan, doesn't work for me. So I would say if you can get some vegan protein powder, it's your best case with your situation, especially if it's hard to get after it. I would just say do it. You say you fall short, so just be disciplined, right? Though I get it. It's hard. It's difficult. And protein powder is amazing. So eat a ton, obviously, to bulk, but protein powder all the way in smoothies. You can pound that in 3 minutes and not get too full before you finish it. Great questions, though. I love this. So we'll just write that. Vegan protein powder is, I think, would be great for you. And now let's talk about like leg day, because you're mixing legs at the gym and running, or how do you do that? And you mentioned you got bad shin splints. So I got really bad shin splints when I was running a 10K 5 days a week. I did it for a couple weeks. I was just getting into running, so I wasn't really built up for this, and so I had to like take a ton of time off. And so I like, obviously, if you're running, kickboxing, gym, it makes sense. So how do you balance training? This is really going to depend on where you're at. But here's the thing I actually want to say that relates to what you brought up with barefoot shoes. I'm a massive believer in barefoot shoes. I think you should walk around in them always if you want to build up your foundation. Here's the thing with barefoot shoes, and this is going to help you with the balancing training and the shin splints thing. Because we wear these like cushiony, arched, lifted shoes, our feet muscles are underdeveloped. There's something like 30 muscles in the foot. And so think about it. If you wore a cast for 10 years on your left arm would shrink, right? The muscles would atrophy. So that's basically what we've done with all these shoes, right? They look cool, but they're not great for support. So your feet muscles, in my opinion, have basically atrophied because of these traditional shoes that people wear. So I wear barefoot shoes always. I have some nice ones that look more like dress shoes and things like that, and then some regular ones and tennis shoes. They don't look as cool as Vans and Adidas and Nikes, but it's worth it because you're walking around in these, you're hiking in these, you're going to and from work or school, and you're building back up those feet muscles. So I would try and say walk around in barefoot shoes always and absolutely lift in them, because we got to develop your feet muscles. And when I did that, I haven't had shin splints since that one particular time in, like, I think it was like 2019 or something like that. And I've ran crazy amounts of miles, like 212-mile weeks and lots of volume. So that's definitely going to help, in my opinion. And then the other thing is work on your running form. I don't know how much effort you've put into this, but sometimes you get shin splints because you're heel striking. So if you haven't heard about this, I want you to YouTube a video, just any video will do. They're all pretty good from what I've seen, is the difference between heel striking and the difference between mid or front foot striking. So just look that up. So let's talk about like heel striking, and I'm just going to write this for notes for you. YouTube heel striking, and mid foot / front foot striking. So watch a video on this, because if you can fix this form, this is going to be really important for you in helping with the shin splints. This is the other thing I did on top of the barefoot shoes, is I fixed my form. When you think about it, if this is your foot and this is your heel, this is the front of your foot, and every time you're landing with your heel into the ground, that's moving up your shin and your leg. So it's adding all this momentum as you're trying to run forward, right? Which doesn't make sense. You're trying to like push through that. And so when you get better form and land on your front foot, you can propel and push off of that. So you're not sending all this shockwave up into your leg. You're using that kinetic energy forward. And so if you can figure out how to do a more midfoot or front foot strike, it takes a lot of practice. you're going to help with that shin splints, and you're going to not get those as much or ever if you're doing barefoot shoes and running with proper form. So look up that video because that's going to help with the shin splints. So I kind of avoided that question about balancing training because if you fix the root problem of the shin splints, which maybe was overuse or high volume, but it also might have been you just had bad form, right? Imagine if you were squatting all the time with just terrible form. Of course, your back would be like all fucked up, right? And so that can happen when we don't have the right form with running. So really important part of avoiding injury and shin splints, in my opinion, barefoot shoes, run with good form. Look up heel striking versus midfoot or front foot striking. So now coming back to balancing training, it's going to depend on your goals and what you're trying to do. If you're just trying to run for general fitness, what I would do is if you're lifting and running, you could run it depends on how much you're doing. So for me, I'll run in the morning and then lift in the evening. So I have a successful run, but I'm not all tired out. So if I have a leg day and a running day, I run first and then I do my leg day. Now, it's not a bad thing to do a leg day and then run the next day because you're just really going to, train that mental grit and toughness and get used to running on tired legs, which I think is good. So it sounds like you have a lot going on. When it comes to balancing training, I like to run and then lift heavy. Or if you're really just wanting to maximize and not overdo anything, I would just lift and make sure you're not running the next day, maybe do something else. So it's kind of up to you, but I actually like lifting heavy legs and then running the next day because it really trains you running on tired legs, especially because I do ultras. So I think that'll help you. And then when it comes to concrete compared to grass or dirt, we've already talked about good running form. If you're running with bad running form, the concrete's definitely going to hurt you. Grass and dirt is good because it's not as much impact. And if you're running in barefoot shoes, I would definitely start doing that on grass and dirt before you really start running in barefoot shoes on concrete. So maybe you have a supportive shoe when you're running on concrete, but then you can do barefoot shoes on grass and dirt. I don't do a whole lot of running in barefoot shoes just because I run a lot of roads and stuff like that or trails with a bunch of rocks. So I haven't really trained that, and it's cool. But like when I'm running 100 miles, I don't really plan on running in barefoot shoes. So it kind of, again, depends on all your goals. So I definitely look at just balancing your training with, if you're going to run in barefoot shoes, make sure you're not doing too much the day before, or maybe you run in the morning and lift in the evening and have a rest day the next day. So it's kind of up to you. I don't really know much about kickboxing. I haven't done that, so I don't want to speak on it too much. And then last question, when it comes to thoughts on high carb, well, being a runner, you're fueled with carbs, obviously being a vegan, and without carbs, you feel like you're underperforming massively. That makes sense. I don't think carbs are a bad thing. They're great fuel and sources of fuel for runners. The thing that's unfortunate is in like the weight industry or fitness industry, sometimes they say be careful of carbs. Carbs are not a bad thing if you're using them up. And if you're running, you're definitely using up your carbs. Now, there's something else you can look into, which is being a fat adapted athlete. You could YouTube that. And what this is basically you deplete yourself of carbs, you go into ketosis, and you get your body used to using ketones. And it's way more complicated, and there's other people who explain it better than me. But there are some very successful runners out there, especially ultra runners, that actually are very low carb and high fat. And they use fat to burn fuel. And so look into maybe being a fat adapted athlete if you want to remove carbs completely. But since you're like forced vegan and you have a lot of carbs, I wouldn't worry about it too much, man. I wouldn't be too worried about like, am I doing too many carbs? I get that there's a carb crash. But if you balance eating like a lot of carbs before your run, you're going to burn that out. And maybe you try and avoid as much carbs later in the day. But again, when you're vegan, that's going to be difficult. So I wouldn't worry about it too much, man. I get that there's a lot of ill will on carbs, but I run with carbs and I eat carbs all day because I run a lot and I train a lot. So you can time it where if you eat your meals right before a workout or a run, you're going to burn a lot of that up. So you're going to avoid some of that carb crashing. And again, when you're forced vegan, there's not much you can do. But if you can get to a point where you're a fat adapted athlete, which is something I've experimented with and I think I want to do more of later in my life, you can get to a place where you actually don't really use carbs as your source of fuel and you switch to being a fat adapted athlete. So I'm gonna write some more notes in this for your help to help you and just kind of give you a little bit of guideline based on your questions. And feel free to give me some follow-up questions. So hopefully this helps. I love that you're asking these questions, and keep asking away, man. That's what this group is for. Welcome to the Running Elite.